Hi, welcome back. My name's David Blissett, and in this video we're going to quickly be running through the pipeline for binding and mirroring when you're playing around with joints within Maya, especially if you've not done it in a while. And when I say a while, I'm talking like almost a year. So what do we have here? At the moment, I am currently trying to add some aim constraints between the joints to make sure that the joints are pointing in the correct direction. So essentially they had the orientation that I required, which is like a Y up, Z forward, for some work that I'm doing in Unity at the moment. However, they weren't oriented to aim at each other. And that was a problem, especially when I started to set up some physics colliders on the joints themselves. So they were all oriented with just Y straight up and Z straight forward, which is wrong. So right now I've just completed the process of applying the aim constraints. If you notice, we have the aim vector as 1 in Z and the up vector as 1 in Y. So this got me where I needed to be. So right now I need to essentially just reparent the bones in the correct order. So what you see me doing here now is essentially just trying to get the correct order for the parenting. And so I'm looking on the left hand just to see what the joint should actually look like after it's been reparented. So yeah, like I said, it's been a while. So anyways, we're just going to kind of go through here now and quickly select the joints in the right order, and then just press P and see what happens. See, it's quite important that you get all of this right. I've been going back and forth between Maya and Unity just to get this bit of work done. Now, unfortunately, because I've been doing a lot of corporate web work the past couple of months, you get a bit rusty. So yeah, I just thought to myself, let's go ahead and put together a reasonably detailed video that records the steps, because if you try and do a Google in 2022 for something like binding or mirroring for Maya and joints, you're getting 20 years worth of history to troll through on Google, and sometimes the context is good and sometimes it's just not exactly what you need. So by putting this video together and hopefully just popping this up on YouTube, maybe I'll find it helpful in the future, or maybe it will somebody else will find the information handy, especially as this is an up-to-date version of Maya. It's the 2020 version. So yeah, so right now we just about got the joints configured. We need to get the hand, the base joint for the hand into the mix. At the moment, I've just done the actual fingers themselves, the finger joints. So retrospectively, I'm just gonna unparent that hand and get the thumb going as well. Yeah, it's quite interesting. I came across one bug where it was saying that even if you had 1 in the scale axis, for some reason it might be using floating point numbers. So even though it's looking as though you're seeing 1, you actually need to go in and reapply 1 to the scale. I think this had something more to do with say for example you flipped the axis to the x-axis, right? So you've gone from the right to the left, and now what you're trying to do is unparent something, and it's giving you an extra transform node. That was extremely painful. In the end, it just worked out that if I got rid of the geometry, right, from the base, from the actual base group itself, and then did the freeze transform with the group and the joints, then everything kind of came together. But discovering that, that was incredibly painful. So so as it stands here now, we're just trying to make sure that we also make sure the orientation for the joints are correct for the thumb joints. So we essentially want to make sure that there is each parent is pointing at its child, if that makes sense. And as we're doing this, we do know that we're building up aim constraint objects under the hierarchy, but we'll clean that up later. So again, we want Z in the aim vector and Y as up when we're applying this constraint. Oh no, we've just gone ahead and done the child to the parent, so we just need to reverse that. Go ahead, make selections are correct. Boom. I mean, it's one thing if you're working in a game studio and you're doing this thing almost every day, it's become second nature. But when you're doing this like every 12 to 18 months, yeah, you better make sure that your memory is pretty sharp. So we select the child, select the parent, and then press P to do the parenting. Child parent, do the parenting. So that just about brought the majority of everything together. As you can see, we've got some aim constraint nodes there, so we're just going to need to kind of clean that up. Don't want that in the export going into Unity. Just making sure that everything is parented back to the hand, even though we're not seeing what's going on. We've got everything in isolation mode there, so we're just gonna get it back into isolation mode and just quickly do a sense check on what we've got here. So now we're gonna expand everything and start selecting the extra nodes that essentially we're just putting the constraints in. You only need that for a short period of time, so we can get rid of that there. So now we are reparenting the geo to the actual hand itself. Now this old left hand, even though it looks pretty good, we still have the same issue on that hand as far as the orientation of the joints, each parent facing its child or oriented towards its child in the z-axis. So we just hide that for the time being because we essentially need to reparent it. So whatever we currently got on the right hand, we're going to need to get that thrown over to the x-axis. So we just flip that over here. So the real magic is going to come in. We need to actually zero out the x-axis, and like I mentioned earlier, I had a bit of fun with that last night, and yeah, we just want to make sure we get this right. So x-axis, we are now going to do what is this there, freeze transform. So we've unparented the geo, because had we parented that geo to the hand, we might have had a bit of strange fun here. And it looks like we've just parented the geo to the actual group node itself. So that's going to be a problem. I'm pretty sure as I was actually doing this, I didn't actually notice that that was the issue. But we managed to get it resolved in any case. Right, okay, so we're attempting to do a bind and unbind, bind and unbind, and it wasn't actually binding. And the reason is because the geo is bound to, well, no, it is actually bound to the correct joint now. So that's pretty good. So just testing things out before we go in and try that again. Got an error there. So what I'd clicked on was unbind, and I was thinking, why was the bind not flowing correctly? So let's test that out. Now I do know that I had some initial issues trying to get that going on the left hand. The right hand seems to be doing pretty good, but we're probably going to need to do some weight painting in a bit, and this is a good exercise. So rather than having to come and work on doing some weight painting on a larger object like a vehicle or some kind of organic creature, just having something as simple as the hands to kind of need to sense check and put out the full pipeline. It's only a few joints, and so if you do have any bugs or issues, you can kind of work through it quite readily. So right now we're just attempting to get things going as far as binding. I know I probably had to attempt this on the left hand side a few times. If I recall, what the fix was in the end was I needed to do not only a freeze transform but a deleting of the history, and after doing the deleting of the history, that kind of came about. Now that was not fun. If you can appreciate it, as what it should be is as straightforward as selecting the geo and the parent joint, and then the entire hierarchy should be taken into account if you've got that selected in the skinning options. But yeah, I was like rocking back and forth between is like, why is this not binding it? Because the steps work perfectly for the right hand, but for some reason when I went over to the left hand, right, no, note to the community, make sure that the geometry has been zeroed out. Now in this instance, the geometry itself had values in there, so it's like almost like it was not taking into account the correct distance. And so by doing the freeze transform on the geo, so now it's zeroed out, I had to stop and test that what the issue was. So there it is, it's zeroed out, and so now we should be able to successfully get a bind skin going. Takes us a little bit longer than before, and so now we're going to test that out. Hey, and so now we have some success, right? And that's looking pretty good. So I guess I was feeling myself at the times like, yes, I've done this, and so I went back to the right hand. I was like, you know what, I'm going to unbind and attempt to get the freezing of the geometry done. And yes, I think I walked myself into a bit of problems at that time, because then it wouldn't bind on the right hand, but we managed to get that resolved in any case. So see, I'm holding my breath here now. There we go. So now we've just done a freeze transform on the geo. And so now we're going to have to try and recover. So it's going to be something along the lines of deleting the history and then doing a freeze transform. And so we kind of work through the pipeline. It's only a few of these options that you should really need to do. It's nothing like anything esoteric that you need to try and figure out. So we're just trying to go ahead and test out the right steps just to make sure we've got that on tape, and we know we can then overcome it again. So here we go. So that's pretty good. We have the ability to do the bind. Unfortunately, now if you notice the wrist for the hand, it's being deformed, and I don't think I've weight painted in many years, and maybe about 5 years. But fortunately, the workflow within Maya has been consistent over the years, and yeah, it's like that muscle memory from back in the days when I was doing some work for a YouTube pilot, a bit of animation. You spend enough hours doing that, and it will get ingrained in your memory. Trust me. So here we're just trying to figure out again what the weight paint process is, and you know that we got that big button there, select geo. It wasn't kind of obvious at the time, but because you have paint then select, but then you have to click the select geometry button to actually to focus the object that you want to do the work on, right? So we want to flood 0 value on the base of the actual wrist there. But first we need to get that isolated, and we want to select the actual thumb. So right now that's the full hierarchy, I think, or at least the hand itself. So when you scroll all the way down, I think, yep. And then now we have so you can see that gray section there, the wrist, that we need to zero that out. So essentially we're saying for the thumb, the base of the thumb, make sure that there's no influence being passed down to the base of the geometry. Now for a lot of you will know that, but if you're new to Maya, or you're just trying to resurrect some old knowledge, these are the steps. One thing that is, because this is an asset that I got off the Unity asset store, and it's a good asset, but I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, for a low geometry or low poly option, this geometry is pretty dense. It's it has tessellation on there, but it's for a VR app, and so it's a first class citizen in VR. And what I mean by that is right in your face, right? So it's gonna be, you want a good amount of feedback, high fidelity, for anything that's going to be right up in your face, right? Anyways, we want to test this out now and see how the deformations are looking. We still have a bit of influence going at the base of the wrist there. So if you move your own hand around, you kind of get a feel for it. It's not like something that doesn't apply to you, and then it's right in your face. So you can just kind of test it out and think, should this bone be influencing that far back on the wrist? And the wrist is, for the most part, stationary. But yeah, it's we're gonna probably go back in and make a few more tweaks, just to make sure that we don't have to necessarily come back into Unity. I mean, literally the last time I was playing with this was maybe August last year, and so I kind of parked things up. I was doing a lot of work in Houdini, which was fantastic in terms of like the productivity of the tool and the integration work that they've done with Unity technologies as well. But now I need to kind of be focusing more, when I'm not doing the corporate 9 to 5, on some Unity work. I mean, it's like any other knowledge. If you don't use it, you lose it to a certain degree. And so, yeah, the amount of past time that I've invested in this technology, I mean, I would probably like to have stuck with Unreal Engine, but it's like, on one hand you want to build a skill set between the two tools, because Unreal is pretty good as well, but the direction of Unreal is high end. So right now with Unreal Engine 5, we've already had a pre-release and it should be coming out soon. And I've played with it. It's the UI looks pretty good, and the workflow is pretty much the same for a lot of instances between version 4 of Unreal and version 5. What they're targeting is very revolutionary concepts, right? And so from what I gather, maybe like 8-9 months ago now, the focus is the artist shouldn't need to be messing around with UVs and things like that. Just drag these high fidelity objects, high density objects in terms of like poly count into Unreal, and it will go ahead and it will clean things up for you and generate your level of details and things like that. So that's pretty revolutionary. And it's like if you're trying to aim for a low end object, or a low end type game, or low poly device, right? Like your mobile phones or something like that, you're not going to want to be throwing millions of polygons at it. And it'd be great if you could see that the tool that you'll get with Unreal is going to be able to not only deal with the high poly counts, but the low poly counts as well. And that might be what they come up with. But at that time, going back a year ago, it wasn't clear that that was a vision. And so sticking with Unity is going to be able to deal with the existing generation pipeline, the next generation pipeline. They've got HDR, they've got UPR, Universal Render Pipeline, High Definition Render Pipeline. As far as graphics, the new shader technology, visual effects graph, which is really nice. It's one thing though when you say it's really nice, but when you think, well, hold on there, I'm relearning this again, so it's another particle system. So I think it's called, was it Shuriken particle system that they had? That's still going to be around. The VFX graph is really targeting some of the more modern devices. I believe that the focus is to be able to expand the number of targeted devices that they'll be looking to focus for in the future. But I like VFX Graph because it's using a more modern pipeline, and you're getting a lot of nice toys while working with it. If I recall, back in the day in Unreal, not even Unreal, UDK4, that was my introduction to some of the particle systems that they had. I think it was Cascade, and then there was an offering from NVIDIA that was trying to target some of the particle system options at the time. This is going back like 7 years ago, but this is the problem. It's like if you try and stay on the forefront of cutting edge, you'll always learn something new. But whether or not that option will last the test of time, a lot of these things can fall by the wayside. So what you want is long-term support. What you want is to know that if you invest your energy into utilizing some of these tools, that knowledge is not going to be wasted knowledge, right? And so like that NVIDIA option, it was like great for the time that I was using it to demo and do a couple of videos, but it wasn't practical, and to a certain degree some wasted effort as well in terms of taking on that knowledge. But a tool like Maya, very versatile. I started looking at Maya maybe 2007, maybe a little earlier than that. This is going back to when Maya was owned by Alias, right? I'd looked on 3ds Max earlier than that, but a lot of the training material that was available, that was really bringing you into the whole rigging and animation pipeline back then, was very much focused around Maya. So Hollywood, Ice Age, Gollum in Lord of the Rings and things like that. You could get training material showing you how to do some of the more detailed kind of animation. But back then, and it shows my age, the gaming pipeline was not very clear, and you need to have big bucks to be in that kind of sphere, as it were, sphere of influence. And so you were doing training for high-end movies for which you weren't working in a movie studio. So not wasted effort. It was just there was no Unity or Unreal available for you to utilize that knowledge and take the tools or the models into something like Unreal. I mean, you had UDK, but unless you had 100,000 to actually license it to be a part of your game studio, you weren't going anywhere. But that's it, guys. This is what we have so far. We managed to get both the left hand and the right hand sorted and then brought across, or at least exported. So we're going to wrap things up there for now. Again, this is just a pipeline video to kind of demo some of the kind of issues that you'll run into and the options that you should be selecting. So thanks again, and I'll see you next time.